No, there absolutely is a connection.
What the hell are you talking about?
The note said to meet at 6 a.m., which is the same time Taka was murdered. You've already proven that using his wristwatch. But there's more. Look where the note says to meet. The equipment room, right?
Which is where Taka was killed. I see.
So, Taka was murdered at both the time and place written in the note. I think that should be plenty to show that this note was definitely meant for Taka.
Well, when you put it like that... No further objections!
Then someone used that note to trick Taka. Just the same as me. The culprit really is a cold-blooded monster. Telling people they found a way out.
But if they gave the note to Taka, what was Hifumi doing with it?
Stuffed down his pants, no less!
Most likely. Hifumi stole it off Taka's corpse after he died.
He stole it?
Where's your proof? Go ahead, show us.
The corner. That Hifumi stole the note from Taka is...
I got it! When I searched Taka's body, I saw that his lifeless hand was gripping a small scrap of paper. If I'm right about this, the sheet of paper this piece came from is... I knew it! It fits perfectly with the note we found hidden on Hifumi.
Then Taka's scrap and Hifumi's note.
Yup, they're from the same piece of paper.
Hifumi had the note meant for Taka, while Taka's corpse still grasped a small piece of that note. There's only one way to explain it.
Taka died clutching the note. Hifumi tried to free the note from his death grip, leaving behind only one small scrap. Did I get all that right?
That means Hifumi knew the note was important.
Exactly. Which proves that he was an accomplice in the murder.
Whoa. Yeah. After seeing all this, Hifumi was super involved in this whole thing for sure. In fact, he was behind the whole thing. In fact, he's still alive!
No, he's dead.
Sorry, no. When we found him in the repository, Hifumi was truly and completely dead.
So he disguised his body with the blood, got up, cleaned his glasses, walked up to the repository, and he met somebody there who killed him.
The second body discovery announcement proves that.
So then, who killed Hifumi?
Whoever did is the mastermind, the true killer.
He was killed in the repository, so he must have been killed not long after transporting Taka's body.
So, he must have been killed after Taka's body vanished, but before we found both bodies in the repository.
During that time, we'd all split up and were searching for Taka's missing body. In other words, during that time, none of us have alibis.
Wait, but me and Sakura were together.
Stop trying to steal the spotlight, you stupid walrus?
Who are you calling a walrus?
Anyway, when they were killed bothers me too. But there's something that's been bothering me even more.
And what might that be?
The weapon they used to kill Hifumi.
The weapon?
Yeah, because I mean, according to the Monokuma file, the way Taka and Hifumi were killed was almost the same, with them having similar fractures and all. But Justice Hammer 3 and 4 were still laying around in the nurse's office and equipment room, right? So if Hifumi was killed in the repository, the culprit would have had to grab one of the hammers, kill Hifumi, then put the hammer back where they found it. But wouldn't that be seriously risky for him?
I'm surprised. It seems there's some semblance of a brain knocking around that skull of yours after all.
Hell yeah, it's packed in there good and tight.
Okay.
He's right, though. I don't understand it either. The Monokuma file makes it clear that they were killed using similar instruments. But if the hammers were already laying around those other rooms...
So the question is, how could the culprit have gotten their hands on either of the hammers? Personally, I haven't a clue. So which hammer was used to attack Celeste? Number 1 or number 2?
Those were accounted for in other rooms too. And I don't think either one is big enough to kill someone.
Is it not possible they used a different weapon?
I don't think it is possible. They were both killed with the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah, a blunt instrument, but not necessarily a hammer.
So then, what was used to kill Hifumi?
The weapon that was actually used to kill Hifumi. The whole picture surrounding this case won't become clear until we figure that out. Somehow I have to find the truth. Spotless hammer. Okay.
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info!
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers! And, that's about it.
Hifumi was killed in the repository, right? So if the weapon used to kill both of them were actually similar...
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3?
Yeah, the clue is a spotless hammer.
Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Spotless hammer.
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info!
Okay.
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be
What
one
if
of the
5
Justice
was?
Hammers!
No, because it
And,
would have been bloody.
That's about it.
No, it would have been bloody. Hifumi was killed in the repository, so if weapon was...
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance!
No. It's a WRA.
Shoot!
No.
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info.
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the Justice Hammers. And, that's about it.
What was used to kill Hifumi? Was it Justice Hammer 3? Maybe Justice Hammer 4?
Well, whatever it was, there's one thing we have to figure out. How was the culprit able to move around so freely with the weapon? How did nobody witness them carrying it?
Sounds like a Justice Hammer 5 is about to make its appearance! Check out murdergear.com/hammertime for more info.
Well, one thing seems pretty clear. The murder weapon had to be one of the...
No,
No,
that's
it's
it.
wrong.
Nah, wasn't as complicated as I thought. As usual.
The murder weapon wasn't a Justice Hammer at all. No, it was something completely different.
But, seriously? A different weapon?
Specifically, a hammer from the repository. But for some reason, one of them had been scrubbed clean. And the reason it had been scrubbed clean?
Hang on a second, I've got it in auto and I can't remember how to get it back to the clicking. Oh, space key. There we go. The reason it had to be scrubbed clean, and the reason it had to be scrubbed clean was most likely because it had used to commit
If
murder.
the hammer got covered in Hifumi's blood, of course they'd have to clean it off. I'd also like to point out that the repository has all kinds of hammers. Big ones, small ones, and even some flat mallet-like ones. I think whoever made the Justice Hammers used those as a basis for their design.
If that's true, that would explain the Monokuma file's note about the wounds being similar.
So Hifumi moved Taka's body to the repository, where someone then used a hammer to kill him.
Whoever did that is the true killer. The one Hifumi was working with. And the one who betrayed him. Hold on a moment. I still think it's strange to assume someone was working together with him. The way the graduation rule works, there is no benefit to helping someone else carry out a murder. So the idea that anyone would work together like that is simply ludicrous. We talked about this, did we not?
We did talk about how that wouldn't be any reason for anyone to work together. At least that's what we thought at first, but... Again, the spotless hammer.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
How did we say there's no chance two people work together on this?
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who actually carried out the act can graduate and survive. Assuming the rule holds true, it is simply impossible that two people work together on this.
There were two murders.
That is how the rule was explained to us.
Yeah.
But that only really applies if there's one murder, right? In this case, however, there were two murders.
if I grab you...
Based on the rules that have been laid out for us, even if more than one person is complicit in the murder, only the one who
I think
actually
this is
carried
wrong.
out the act can graduate and survive, assuming the rule holds true.
No, I was right.
No, it's wrong.
No, I was right. Cool. Okay.
Since there were 2 murders, it's at least plausible that more than one person was involved.
What do you mean?
If there'd only been one murder, then yes, the idea of an accomplice isn't really worth considering. Naturally, if only one person can be saved per murder, an accomplice has no risk versus reward benefit.
Risk versus reward benefit?
The payoff for working together. The reward that balances out the risk of taking part in a scheme. There's no point in being someone's accomplice if there's no benefit to you. However, if there were some potential mutual reward for the risk, then cooperation becomes possible.
You're saying that 2 people could act as each other's accomplices to commit 2 separate murders.
I think that's what the true killer told Hifumi. They would each have an accomplice for their crime. And based on the case's events, Hifumi would have been the first one to act, murdering Taka. They made him carry out the first murder so he couldn't back out of helping them later on.
So in this case, there wasn't one single person committing multiple murders. Instead, each person killed someone, creating 2 separate incidents. And it only looked like one person because that's how the true killer designed it to look. A single suspicious individual, a similar weapon used in each crime, disappearing bodies. By creating one seamless set of circumstances, they made it look like one person was behind it all.
The mastermind picked their target and managed to convince him to go along with their plan. And then, to avoid the no accomplices rule, they simply killed their accomplice. Which, if true, means that betraying Hifumi was part of the plan from the very beginning.
That's just awful. How could anyone be so cruel?
You think so? I can't help but admire its cunning. Still, their choice of accomplice seems odd.
Easily manipulated. The effort made to convince us the 2 murderers were the same. That was the main characteristic this time. Yoko must have noticed that fact from the very beginning, which is why she said not to look at this as a series of connected events, but entirely separate incidences. Yoko really is amazing. Although, when you think about it, she's almost too amazing. Like it's almost unnaturally good. How good she is at
I
this.
understand how an accomplice could be involved. But then, who was the one pulling Hifumi's strings?
That's problem numero uno right now.
The true killer manipulated Hifumi to carry out a number of actions, and in the end murdered him. In the debate up till now, the way the case is unfolded, when you consider all that, there's really only one person who seems to fit.
Here's my answer.
Yeah.
It
But we
was
need to prove.
Celeste.
It was Celeste.
So I'm the suspicious individual now, am I?
Yeah, but here's the question, how?
I really do hate this kind of joke.
A joke? I wonder.
So what you are saying, then, is that I specifically chose to work together with Hifumi. The idea that I would choose to spend any amount of time interacting with him, that I would go within 10 feet of that shit from brains, that lazy, worthless, goddamn idiot!
Ooh, there it goes. There it goes. We saw it crack very briefly with the T earlier, but now, yes,
Pardonnez-moi.
yes.
Just to be clear, there is evidence to support it.
Is that so?
It is. Throughout the investigation, there was certain behavior that was common only to the 2 of you. Considering what we've learned so far, it only further proves that the 2 of you were working together.
What is it that only Fumi and Celeste had in common? The screaming, encountering the suspicious individual, the paper hidden in Fumi's pants. The screaming? No, did a lot of screaming.
Shoot!
Ah, dang it! Okay, so it wasn't the screaming. Encountering the suspicious individual.
I got it! The
In that case,
behavior
the other
they
one.
had in common has to do with the suspicious individual in the suit, doesn't it? The only ones who ever actually saw Robo Justice firsthand were Celeste and Hifumi.
Shush. The adults are talking now.
Sorry.
As he said, only Celeste and Hifumi ever laid eyes on the costumed individual. If we accept that Hifumi was one of the culprits, we can't help but suspect what Celeste has said as well.
Are you saying everything they told us was a lie?
After taking Hifumi to the nurse's office, we all began our search for this individual, correct? And not too long after that, do you remember what Celeste said?
I saw a shadow, something moving around at the top of the stairs.
We headed to the second floor specifically because of what she claimed to have seen. Next, to draw us all to the physics lab up on the third floor,
She let out a blood-curdling scream.
and when we'd all come to see what was wrong, what was it she said?
Celeste, what's wrong? That was a rather intense scream for someone like you. I saw him, the strange costume man. He ran off as soon as I screamed. I was blocking the stairs, so he headed further down into the hallway and disappeared.
Once she'd done her job of getting us all up to the physics lab, it was time for her partner to get to work.
Huh? What was that? It came from downstairs. It must have been Hifumi. He's in the nurse's office. This is bad. Come on, we have to go back.
It was to get us to divide into two groups. So that we would discover both bodies at the same time?
In fact, Celeste was precisely the one who proposed that we split up.
And why don't we split into two groups? I'll lead the hunting party. That seems much more interesting. Very well then, Makoto and Hina, you come with me to the nurse's office. We will leave the capture of the suspicious individual to Toko and Byakuya and Saki.
Well, if Celeste and Hifumi were working together, all those chance events suddenly become connected. And on top of that, that piercing cry of yours early on. That was to signal Hifumi, wasn't it? It was your way of telling him, we're on the third floor, everything's going according to plan. Why else would you let out a scream that could have carried across the sea?
I just realized another strange thing. When we found Hifumi in the nurse's office, who we now know was only pretending to be dead,
Yes. Certainly was not expecting this. I did not imagine that Hifumi would be murdered.
Celeste, you were the first one to say he'd been murdered. You wanted to make sure we wouldn't have any doubt in our minds.
I don't believe it. Everything, the whole thing was one big act.
Hina, you were with Celeste when Hifumi's body disappeared, right?
Yeah. I was feeling kind of sick, so Celeste took me to the bathroom. Wait! Then that was...
She wasn't worried about you. She just saw a chance to help Hifumi sneak out of the nurse's office.
Each piece isn't much by itself, but start putting them together and the picture gets very ugly indeed. Wouldn't you agree, Celeste?
I have no idea what you mean.